Hey, what's going on? It is Panthers beat writer Mike Kay, joined by fellow Panthers beat writer Alex Zutlow for the Charlotte Observer, and we are the Processing Blue crew. And we are here for another edition of the Processing Blue podcast just for you. Alex, how you doing?
What is our tagline or mantra or whatever? I think just for you is cool. I think we can do a little bit better if we do some strategic planning. I get it that we're the marketing team behind this logo, or not this logo, this mantra, but I think we can do better than just for you.
I like
Um,
for the sickos, dot, dot, dot.
oh, okay. I mean, it's a little exclusive, but I guess you
Yeah.
want to be a sicko. I guess
Well,
that's
what about for the sickos, dot, 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 in parentheses, but also normal people too.
Wait, that's actually really cool. And I hope you don't take offense to this because people could associate that with you're the sicko and I'm the normal person. And we both appeal to both people.
I don't know. You haven't seen Jaws, so I don't think that makes you a normal person. But
No, okay, I don't understand how you work this into the intro of the pod. Seeing Jaws as a 28-year-old, a very, very young millennial, might I add, is not
very, very young millennial.
it's not
It's
unprecedented.
amazing.
Jaws it's going on its 50th year this year, bro.
I mean, it it's like an essential film, man. Like
your game.
next you're gonna tell me you don't remember going to Blockbuster. Like, what are we talking about?
No, I do remember going to Blockbuster. There was one right next to the Beef O'Brady's in Cary, North Carolina, and I used to go to Beef O'Brady's all the time.
What a memory.
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't. Blockbuster was a thing. Obviously I knew
Yeah, it
of
was a
Jaws.
thing.
Yeah, obviously I knew of Jaws, but bro, I went to see the new Jurassic Park movie and Superman, and both of them had like a Jaws. Oh, this is the 50th year celebration, and I was like, golly, Mike's old for talking about that so much. It's
Well,
50 years ago.
and I don't know if you can appreciate the music in both, but both of those movies had overtures to the soundtrack from the original Jurassic Park and the 70s Superman, both done by John Williams. But we cover the Panthers here, and
I thought that was fun though. Yeah.
we've got a lot cooking over at the Charlotte Observer. Alex and I had done a position series. It's an in-depth analysis series for every position. Go check that out at the Charlotte Observer. We also are in the midst of a very, very cool docu-series slash written project from Scott Fowler and Thaden James. Talk about that a little bit, Alex, because I mean, I think that's right up your alley.
Oh, it's absolutely right up my alley. This project is called Supermen, the inside story of the 2015 Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the 2015 team was one of two teams in Carolina Panthers franchise history to make the Super Bowl. We are going to talk to them later in the episode, and by them, I mean Thaden James and Scott Fowler, the brain trust behind this project. And just personally, this was the team that got me and many people of my generation to fall in love with the NFL, particularly in the Carolinas. You had so
In
many.
a generation,
No. No, that was good. No, they have so many prominent characters, even still that are still very much in public life today. You got Greg Olson, who's one of the best studio analysts in football right now. You got Luke Kuechly, who is up for who is going to be up for the Hall of Fame for a long time until he ultimately gets that gold jacket. And he's also doing media with the Panthers right now. You obviously got Cam Newton, who is embarking on a really successful YouTube career right now, and who simply he was the NFL, at least in young Alex's eyes. He was the NFL for a 3 or 4 year stretch, and it peaked in 2015. So reading about this series, which is a 4-part online series, as well as a full-length documentary, which we'll go into more detail about later on in the podcast. But just absorbing that run 10 years later is really cool and special, and it transports me into a different time and place. And yeah, it's great. But we also got other things going on at the Charlotte Observer, and particularly covering the Carolina Panthers. Among them, Mike is wrapping up our positional series, heading into training camp. And, Mike, somehow training camp is next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. And I think something a lot of Panthers fans are keeping an eye on is the contract or the lack thereof of Nic Scourton, the team's
Right.
second round pick. He's one of 30 second round picks who has not signed a contract. He technically wouldn't be a holdout because he's not under contract, and he would not be subject to fines if he didn't show up, which gives him leverage in negotiations. Now, this has been a big topic the last couple of weeks just because it's getting so close to training camp. Um, Obviously, the rest of the draft class is signed, so they're not worried about T-Mac McMillan. They're not worried about Princely Eamon Nealon. They're not worried about all the day three guys. Nic Scourton is in kind of a unique situation, and I'm going to try to make this as compact as possible. So here's what's happened. Jaden Higgins, the 34th pick in the draft, was given a fully guaranteed contract by the Houston Texans. So he was the second pick in the second round, which then forced the Browns to essentially guarantee Carson Schwarzenegger's contract because he was the 33rd pick in the in overall and the first in the second round, and he was kind of stuck. The Browns were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, this is unprecedented. Typically, what happens is players get a portion of their contract guaranteed. Typically, the first 2 years are guaranteed, and that third year, it's a certain percentage. And I think that's created kind of a standstill. Talking to people around the league, it just kind of seems like this is a wait for somebody to blink sort of thing. I don't know that either is necessarily in the wrong here. The NFL in general is following their script, right? That's how it's been for the last 10 to 15 years. This collective bargaining agreement, and agents are seeing an opportunity to get the most guaranteed money for their clients. So I think both sides have an argument. The thing is closer you get to camp, the harder it is to kind of, especially as a player, sacrifice money or sacrifice an opportunity or get behind the eight ball. Granted, they're second round picks. They're going to make the team, but you want to have a role. You want to ascend. You want to do all this. These guys are competitors. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this. I think those that are concerned about Scorton being in training camp on time, valid concern. I don't know that either side, the Panthers or Scorton, are particularly worried about this situation because I think once the dam breaks, everybody's going to kind of fall in line. But you also have to remember he was picked 51st overall. So he's like kind of the middle rung of the second round. And so there's a lot that has to happen either behind him or in front of him to really get a quality turn here. Last year's first or fifth, 51st pick was center Zach Frazier. You might remember him from the run up to the draft. He was drafted 51st overall by the Steelers. He had his contract fully guaranteed for the first year and then had 54% of his 2026 salary, his third year of his contract, guaranteed. And then he had nothing guaranteed in the fourth and final year of his contract. So to go from the 51st overall pick, going from 54% of his third year guaranteed and none of his fourth year guaranteed to fully guaranteed does seem like a significant jump, right? Even if they were just a fully guaranteed that third year, it seems like a significant jump. But agents are seeing what happened with Higgins and Schwarzenegger, and they are saying, well, our deals should be improved there. Now, it wouldn't shock me if they did something to where there was a significant jump in the guarantee. Like I could see something like 75%, 80%. That would be logical, right? Because everybody in front of them is going to get a little bit better of a guarantee. But, it's a matter of who blinks. And I think, given that there are 30 second round picks that haven't signed, there's a lot of wiggle room there. Now, over the weekend, the Browns' second round pick, the 36th overall pick, Quinshon Judkins, was arrested in South Florida on battery charges. Now, that could be a wrinkle in this whole thing where the Browns say, pending this legal issue, you might not be able to get fully guaranteed money, right? Like, why would you guarantee a guy who right off the bat put himself in the position,
Right.
um, innocent until proven guilty, but put himself in a position to be uh, under scrutiny from a legal standpoint. And so it'll be interesting to see how that's handled by the Browns. He's subject to, um, the NFL's policies, even though he has not signed a contract yet. So that could play into it too. It could be that if he is ultimately suspended or the charges go to trial or whatever, that it, wipes out the guarantees. That's typical. If you get suspended, you typically forfeit your guaranteed money or the ability to hang on to that guarantee in your contract. Some teams pursue the money, some teams don't. But that could be a wrinkle in this. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, but from a business standpoint, that might be where you see stuff kind of fall down the wayside.
Yeah. One quick clarification and then a question to you, Mike. So just a quick clarification to the listeners. Nic Scourton does not have a contract. This means that he is not technically holding out.
Correct.
Because you can't have a holdout if you don't have a contract. Secondly, you can't show up to training camp if you're not under contract. Like, so this idea of, oh, could he still, like Brian Burns a couple years ago, he was still showing up to training camp and showing up to summer open workouts, because he was under contract, but he ultimately held out for a while trying to get another contract, trying to get extended ultimately.
Correct.
This is very different. Yep. Okay.
Right. There's no protection here. Like during OTAs, you sign a waiver that basically ensures you will get the money that you would have gotten typically when healthy. That's part of the issue with the Shamar Stewart stuff with the Bengals is that like their handling of that was kind of off base to the norm.
Okay, and then a question, and this is a very subjective and more qualitative question than quantitative question, but I wonder how this impacts the psyche of the locker room if immediately and I'm not saying this is Nic Scourton's. I imagine a lot of it is out of his control, but how does this impact the psyche of the locker room if a rookie is coming in and just isn't signing a contract immediately with the team? I'm curious to see how that plays out. I don't know if you have any perspective or have any idea on that question, but that's something that my mind immediately goes to.
Well, I think unions typically favor the people that are in the unions, right? So veteran players. And I think, veterans understand what happened before them or what happened during them. So I think they understand the business aspect of it. It's like they weren't treated with kid gloves either. I think from a rookie standpoint, if you're a rookie and you're worried about somebody not being there, you've got to focus on your job. You've got to focus on your playbook. I think Scorton's really interesting because he's a guy who, by all accounts, is very football oriented. He loves the game. He's got a great football IQ. He probably wants to talk to coaches. He probably wants to be involved.
He showed up to every open workout. He didn't miss a voluntary workout either.
Right. I mean, he had the waiver at the time, but he is a guy who seems very dedicated to his craft, and so I do wonder how that could affect his onboarding and training camp. You don't want to be that guy that shows up late. I don't think any of his teammates are going to judge him for not being there. I don't think, frankly, they're going to pay two cents to worry about what his situation is. I mean, it's not like he's like the lone holdout here. It's, these second round picks are kind of trying to figure this out, and good on the agents for trying to get the best deal for their clients. But also from the NFL side, they're not known to just blink. They're just not. It's not like a thing. And so, I'm really interested if we ever figure out why the Texans just jumped and were like, yep, here's a fully guaranteed contract. But and maybe we can ask them about that during joint practices because they've caused kind of a headache for the rest of the league. But look, I mean, there's a lot going on with the NFLPA. Obviously, there is the outing of the documents of the uh, potential collusion results of fully guaranteed contract. That's obviously a sore subject around the league. And collusion is a word that is thrown out around, the reporting of this, the NFLPA and NFL's dealings. And so I think they're at an interesting standpoint here, especially with a new collective bargaining agreement not really coming down the pike anytime soon. So we brought up earlier that Alex has a conversation with Thaden and Scott that, they're going to go in depth into the Superman series. And, I think what's kind of cool about this is it was only 10 years ago, but it's such a time capsule for a lot of people. And I'm really interested to hear what they have to say. Alex, without further ado, I'm going to toss it to you and your interview with Scott Fowler and Thaden James.
Okay, we're back here on the Processing Blue podcast, and we're joined by two very special guests, Thaden James, our wonderful features writer here at the Charlotte Observer, and Scott Fowler, our indelible sports columnist. Along with our visual journalist, Jeff Seiner, they've been spending the last several months putting together a massive project called Supermen, the inside story of the 2015 Carolina Panthers. The project consists of a 4-part online series, which has already begun running on the Charlotte Observer website this week, and a full-length documentary, which is premiering at the Independent Picture House in Charlotte on Thursday, July 24, and is already sold out. It will, however, also be available on YouTube later this month. You can find all details about everything at our website, charlotteobserver.com. Thaden, Scott, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for having us, Alex.
Of course. So I'd like to begin by asking about the genesis of this project. Thaden, I'll start with you. Who pitched who on reliving the story of this 2015 Carolina Panthers team, and what initially drew you to the story?
Well, you would probably think that it would have been Scott's idea, him being the sports guy of the two of us, and you would actually be probably a little surprised about how rarely I watch football, or maybe you wouldn't. But yeah,
Oh, great. Wonderful. You write wonderful sports stories all the time, so this doesn't surprise me at all.
he went to more football games probably last December than I've been to in my entire life. But so let's see. So basically, the backstory is, I've been at the Observer since 2006. So I was here in 15 when during the 15 season. And so, naturally, kind of a lot of people in the newsroom at that time got swept up in coverage of helping to cover that team and kind of everything that was going on around it, just because it was a huge deal in the city. And probably about halfway through the season, I started getting more and more involved in writing feature stories. And by the time, the Seattle playoff game was here, the NFC championship game was here. I went to both of those. Incredibly exciting time in the city, like the most exciting time that I can remember in this city, most energy, at least around a sporting event. And was among what was this guy? I think we had more than a dozen people went to San Francisco that year. With it. Yeah, we were out there from like Monday through the game, and with the exception of like the outcome of the game, one of the highlights of my career here at the Observer, just to, being able to cover Super Bowl, super fun, amazing. And so like since then, every year Facebook reminds me that I was there, or I have an old colleague who will text me every year and say, can you believe it's been 6 years since we went to Super Bowl, 7 years since we went to Super Bowl. So I knew kind of 10 was coming up. I've had 10 on my radar, and I was trying to think about like what to do if I wanted to be involved in doing a 10-year kind of thing. And it kind of crystallized for me last fall when I saw, I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. The Comeback came out, and I binged it, and it kind of takes you back to that time. It's thrilling, it's emotional, it's nostalgic, and it's almost like, even though you know it's going to happen, it's suspenseful. And I thought, well, this is what I would like to do, or this is what someone at the Observer should do, to kind of celebrate this team. And I wasn't necessarily sure it was going to be me, but Scott and I had just come off the year before, had done a project, or that year actually had done a project on a forgotten plane crash in Charlotte.
Yep.
Teamed up on that. I had a great chemistry with him, really enjoyed working with him. So I asked him if he wanted to be involved. And particularly knowing that he maybe had some better connections with that team than I did, thought that would be a great person to collaborate with on this. And I was very fortunate that he said yes. That's basically it.
And we brought back Jeff Seiner too, also, who was instrumental in all of our plane crash series, which is called 9/11/74 for the date of that plane crash in Charlotte. And the Netflix show that he recommends there is worth looking up if you haven't come across it. It won a bunch of awards, but it's about the 2004 Red Sox, and it's called The Comeback on Netflix, right? They like 3 or 4 parts.
That's correct.
Yeah. So our idea was we had a documentary aspect to the plane crash too. That one was kind of the documentary of maybe a little secondary to or at least 50-50. This one we started with the script and then have, kind of gone from there, learning from a few of our mistakes on our first big project. So this documentary is 60 minutes long. The plane crash was 30. And the word count on the plane crash was larger than the word count on Supermen, but we have had a great time putting it all together.
So Scott, I gotta imagine that when Thaden approached you with this idea, when y'all first started working on this project, you had a few tentpole moments that you immediately knew you needed to hit when you consider this 2015 team. The Josh Norman, Cam Newton fight in training camp. Head coach Ron Rivera's house burning down, which for some reason I remember when I was, in 2015. Things like this. What were some of the other immediate tentpole moments that you needed to investigate beyond those two? What were some moments in which you learned something new about? What were some significant moments that you didn't know about until you did this project retroactively? I'm curious about all that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the Super Bowl, of course, you had to investigate that as fully as you could because that's where the season ended with a thud. The Dallas game, I would say, was significant in a lot of ways. It was the Panthers' first Thanksgiving Day game ever. And then kind of the place where the team was introduced to the nation, I believe. That game was the largest, had the most viewing audience of any game that entire regular season, other than the Super Bowl. Maybe the most people had ever watched a Panthers game, and they just destroyed Dallas. And there were some great stories about all of these, Alex, that nuggets that I never knew. For instance, in the Dallas game, after they finished, well, the players' families, a lot of them have flown to Dallas to watch that game because it was so unusual to have a Thanksgiving Day game. Well, the team plane goes back, as you know, as a Panthers beat writer, we go back the next day, but the team goes back that night. So like at 1 a.m., they've landed in Charlotte. A lot of their families are still in Dallas because they can't get home yet. And so Cam says, you know what, my aunt has cooked up Thanksgiving. Why don't y'all all come to my uptown condo? Who can come? And so like Olson and Derek Anderson and several others whose family was in Dallas are at Cam Newton's house that night eating Thanksgiving dinner at 1 a.m. So that's the sort of stuff that we got into in depth. There's also a long section in part 3 I think people will be interested in about the bat and Odell Beckham and Josh Norman, and a big controversy that was really, I don't think that story's ever been told fully before. So that's in part 3. And of course, all of this is in the documentary we did as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you just explained some things that clear in the fan base's consciousness, you learn some other things as well. So you have an idea of what to cover. Thaden, I'll toss this one to you. Once you figure out, okay, this is what I want to hone in on, how did you go about figuring out who to interview? How many interviews did you all do? I mean, from all the preview materials, it sounds like you talked to pretty much everyone even closely associated with this team. And then in addition to that, once you explain all that, what were some of the challenges of telling the story? Because I imagine there were many.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was from the beginning kind of a full court press. I mean, we immediately targeted all the guys that you would expect us to target. Luke Kuechly, Greg Olson, Jonathan Stewart, Thomas Davis, all these guys that made the Pro Bowl. Coach Rivera, of course. And then, kind of expanded out from there. I mean, so it sort of starts with that, but then also you want to get, Scott from having experience covering that team, knows who all kind of the good talkers are, the guys who are going to offer us the most insight or the most colorful quotes and best anecdotes and that kind of thing. So he had great recommendations on that front. Former coaches, former assistants, former front office guys. And then from there also, I'm really interested in kind of the human interest element of it as well, and making it a story about the, Charlotte and the excitement that was in Charlotte at the time. So we had identified and found along the way some super fans that we wanted to talk to, from the former governor, Pat McCrory, who was the governor at the time, but is a Charlotte guy, who was the mayor of Charlotte for years. Zach Luttrell, who's the founder of Roaring Riot, the fan club. And then we had media types, Morgan Fogarty from WCCB, who was out at the Super Bowl and actually asked Cam Newton the first question at the press conference. Jonathan Jones, who was covering the team for us at the time, who's now a national NFL reporter. And then, even out to people who were impacted in sort of unique ways. Like, you remember Braylon Beam from that season, the 6-year-old kid fighting cancer at the time, kind of ends up becoming the honorary coach through Make-A-Wish at FanFest and gets carried along through this season with his family. So, in terms of numbers, I mean, Scott, what do you think? I would say it's we've said dozens. I think it's at least 3 dozen and possibly 4.
Yeah, at least. I think, Alex, in terms of and most of these interviews are pretty long. So like an hour or 2, we were usually asking for or receiving from these folks. We probably did maybe 40 of those or something. And then there was a number of little, small things that you might just talk to somebody on the phone for or whatever. And they weren't all in person. I would say maybe 2/3 of them were, but some people Dave Gettleman lives in New Jersey and Mike Remmers lives in Oregon and Ryan Khalil lives in California and so on. The big miss, of course, was Cam Newton. We did not get there. Has made a lot of efforts to get Cam through various intermediaries. We know he got the messages. He was not interested in participating, obviously, because we never really got a reason why, just kind of a radio silence. So, yeah. I will say, if you're a Cam fan, you may not notice that because Cam is threaded through the documentary through other stories from all these other people.
Yeah.
So there were some. I was just going to say, when you talk about doing some of these remote interviews, like we're doing this, there were some technical challenges. Probably the biggest challenge, other than the unsuccessful attempt to get Cam, who he didn't decline. He gave no response. The biggest challenge really was the kind of nailing down and locking in the biggest names, the guys that I mentioned in the beginning. It's just Scott was saying recently something like, if someone wanted to do this story something like this in a week, they couldn't, because these guys just don't get back to you fast enough.
They're all busy, they're all in their 30s and 40s and all the things that go on through life. So wonderful when you get them, but just like anybody sort of famous, not the easiest thing to set up. So the logistics were maybe the most difficult part.
You guys talk about the big names on this team. And when you look through that 2015 roster, it's pretty remarkable how many big names this team had. And looking back at the quotes that of some of the stories that have already run through, there are just so many prominent personalities. Obviously, you got Cam, who has his own popular podcast and YouTube channel now. You got Jonathan Stewart and Luke Kuechly, who are employed by the Panthers as media people. Greg Olson is among the best analysts in the NFL broadcasting game now. Scott, in the moment, and you've covered the NFL for a really long time, Scott, in the moment, did you know the Panthers had so much star power on this team, for a lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Having done it, I've been here a long time. Some people would say way too long, but I've covered the team from its inception. So I have seen a lot of Panthers teams come and go. And so that was like, from 95 on, I've covered every team. That was about 20 years in. And you knew that already. I mean, they just had a higher national profile than most, and they had a group of charismatic stars, and I'd throw Josh Norman in there too, who were almost just like you had to talk to 5 or 6 or 7 guys automatically after every game because you never knew what they were quite going to say. They were so well versed in football, and in Josh's case, you really didn't know what he was going to say. And Cam's a little bit too. Cam made a lot of news on his press conferences. So yes, they have gone on to great things, many of these guys, and I'm not surprised. It was the most charismatic group as well as the most talented group the Panthers have ever had.
And I could feel that. Full disclosure, I was born and raised in North Carolina, and I just adored this team and how joyful they were and how otherworldly Cam Newton seemed to be, particularly at this point in my life. I was either going into my freshman year of college or a senior high school. And I just knew that, like, me and my friends were living through this special moment, even as a young person, even as a young fan. And I want both of you guys to answer this, and this is one of my last questions. I want both of you guys to answer this, but Thaden, I'll start with you. Is there any way to quantify how much this team meant to the city of Charlotte and the state of North Carolina?
I mean, I would say, that it meant different things to different people. Like on a macro, super macro level, you think about. I mentioned Pat McCrory, who was governor at the time. Like you've got him making bets with other governors and enjoying the state kind of being in the spotlight. And then on like a micro level, you've got to go back to Braylon Beam, for instance, and the impact that that team had on his family, but also the impact that he had on other people, inspiring that team, and inspiring the city of Charlotte. So you've got and everyone in between. But I guess what I remember most about that season, about what the city felt like at that time, was like, everybody was on board, like in a way that, again, that I've never seen around here. There were people who the year before couldn't have cared less about the team. People who couldn't care less about the team today, who that year were in for that ride. And over and over, from whether it was people who played on the team, coached that team, or were bystanders, fans, and that kind of thing. The word fun kept coming up over and over again. And the other word, I think, that came up, not quite as much, but that I think about, is just like the unity in the city at that time. Especially, it's even more. The contrast is even more stark now, because it just seems like, people talk all the time now about how divisive everything feels like, but everybody was in for that, like I said, in for that ride that year. And it really was, it was just special. Like Coach Rivera told us about, coming back afterward and being kind of really bummed out about not bringing home a title, but being like buoyed by the fan base here, and also by this something that Coach K told him, basically the gist of it is, you did something that I could never do at Duke, which was bring the Carolinas together. And it really did feel like that. I mean, Scott, I don't know if you'd said
Yeah,
said
no,
it.
similarly, yeah, I think that's true. An NFL team that encompasses really two states is what they've always tried to do. You don't have the split loyalties like you do UNC, Duke State, App State, all that stuff. I think people really did pitch in. One little anecdote about that, but we were in another building at that time at the Charlotte Observer, but there was this hamburger joint that myself and some of my colleagues like to go to. And on Monday, the day after Panthers games, they instituted this promotion where whatever margin the Panthers won by, that was how much you got off your bill. So if the Panthers won by 10 points, you got 10% off your bill. So let me tell you, a bunch of us went the day after the Panthers beat Atlanta 38-0, because it was a 38% discount off the bill. And, and they seemed happy to do it because, I mean, the line was out the door, but it just was, it was just a fun, joyous spirit around Charlotte. And I think beyond, the dab was something that kind of went national, and they had a bunch of, even today, Alex, I saw ESPN had a list today of the 25 best teams of the first 25 years of 2000. The Broncos did not make that list despite winning that Super Bowl. The Panthers finished 19th. So people nationally understood how good a team this was. Yes, they laid an egg in the Super Bowl for sure. But I will say, if you consume this series or the documentary, you will find a lot more happiness than depression. You'll find a lot more joy than maybe you expect, even at the end of it, post Super Bowl. So that's my pitch for people to go check it out.
I don't think they need a lot of motivating. I got goosebumps hearing both of your answers just now. Okay, I've kept y'all here long enough. Just one final quick one. Who are your favorite interviews each? Scott, you go first.
If I had to narrow it to one, I would say driving down to Josh Norman, waiting for him for 3 hours in his coffee shop in Egg Place. He said, just show up sometime in the morning. He didn't give us an exact time, but we showed up early, of course, just in case. And Josh came in, and let me tell you, he was worth the wait. What a personality. He's all over the documentary. He's all over the stories. He had huge confrontations that year with Cam and with Odell Beckham. And he just he's just a fun guy to be around. So that would probably be my favorite one.
Thaden?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick too, but I would say that I'm going to say 3. This might be cheating, but Jonathan Stewart and Thomas Davis, who were both very difficult to pin down, were worth the wait in that they both gave us 2 hours, which is an incredible amount of time to get with players of that caliber, former players of that caliber. And, I think you couldn't get them to stop talking. And I think that just speaks to how much that season meant to them, that they were willing to just sit there and share all these great stories about that season. But a cake that I would have to say my favorite was actually Stephen Drummond. And I'll say that because he was the Panthers director of communications at the time. He now works at the University of Georgia as the deputy AD. Is that right, Scott? I've got that.
Yes, something very high up. Yes.
And, we went into this hoping for like gold nuggets, like things that people might not have said at the time, but they're okay with saying now because some time has passed. And, I will just say, I'll tease the documentary story as well. You'll find a surprising amount of Stephen Drummond in there just because he was so candid and so thoughtful. He whatever public relations veneer he had, coding he had on him when he was here, he doesn't have it anymore. It was great. I thought he was just very, like I said, thoughtful and reflective, and had some great stories about a number of different things that you can see in the documentary and read in the story.
Well, guys, this was so great. Thank you so much for your time. Make sure to check out Supermen, the inside story of the 2015 Carolina Panthers, on charlotteobserver.com. And again, if this conversation doesn't motivate you to see this thing, I don't know what will. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex.
Cool. So, I mean, you got a lot out of those guys. They don't mind talking, and I think, what's kind of cool is the three of you were all in North Carolina, all in Charlotte while this was kind of going on. And I think, like, for me, fun K fact, week 1 of the 2015 season was my first regular season game as a beat reporter. I covered the Jaguars, and they played the Panthers. And what I think was really, in retrospect, what was really interesting, that was like a kind of a weird game to cover. Like, both teams didn't look particularly great. I believe it was like a 20-9 game, a lot of turnovers. I specifically remember a Josh Norman pick 6 on Blake Bortles. And I remember Rashad Green, who was a rookie, catching a 1-yard touchdown pass. But outside of that, I don't remember being like Cam Newton is awesome. I mean, I've followed his career since he was at Florida, but and his Auburn year is maybe the most dominant performance of any college player I've ever seen. But it was interesting that they turned into a 15-1 kind of juggernaut in the NFC, because the beginnings were kind of humble. And just one interesting thing about that thing, I wore a powder blue polo to that game to cover it, and I had to do a live shot at a Jaguars tailgate. Not a good choice, because it was
Mike.
I just wasn't really thinking about it. It was a really hot day. I was like, I'm not wearing a suit, a jacket and whatever. This is Jacksonville, whatever. So I was like, I'm going to wear a polo. And I didn't even put it together. And I got so much crap from the Jaguars fans. And it was a lesson learned. So now I never, legit, I never wear an opposing team's colors on game day. I try not to wear any Panthers colors on game day, but in general, there was a lot of unique colors that I would wear the first few years in the league, because I was so traumatized by doing that. But
but Mike, so are you saying that you were interviewing fans and they were talking crap to your face, or you were just doing a live shot in front of the tailgate?
No, I was doing a live shot. They were in the studio, I believe, and then the sports reporter and I were just going back and forth previewing the game, and it just wasn't the best. So, yeah, I mean, you were a senior in high school or a freshman in college?
I was a senior in high school. I guess I was a freshman in college. Yeah. And I went to UNC, and there were a lot of people from Charlotte there. And I still remember, I remember us watching games. I remember one of my best friends, he was a Phillies fan, and me and this other guy and this Phillies fan, his name is Drew. The Panthers beat the Eagles that year, I think, or it's something like that. And Drew had to wear a Cam Newton jersey throughout the entire day of school, of classes or whatever. And that's a very fun picture that I still have in my memory. I don't know, man. It's honestly, it's less about that season and more about those people and that time in Panthers life and Ron Rivera just going for it. And it was I don't know. It was more about a vibe and about how this team impacted the city and impacted the region more so than games won and things like that. Because this fandom in 2015 was unlike, we talked about it. It was unlike anything this team had seen before. The 2003 team was really good and was a golden era of Panthers football. And Julius Peppers got in the Hall of Fame, and all these people said, "Hey, this 2003 people on the 2003 team said this 2003 team," they said, "could beat the 2015 team." And whatever your thoughts are on that, that's cool. The 2015 team captured the imagination of America much more than the 2003 team did. So,
I think that is, yes.
So, anyway, I think that is what's so remarkable about this team, and I think what comes across in the documentary. But enough about the past.
Let's get to the present.
Let's get to the present.
So last
yeah.
week we debuted a segment that we like to call Two Things Can Be True. Alex, what do you got for us this week?
Okay, two things can be true. Chuba Hubbard is healthy and will be playing for a better offense in 2025 and will get the overwhelming majority of carries in 2025, 100%. What's also true? He'll still see a slight dip in production. In 2024, Hubbard notched 712 snaps. That's the most on the team, not an offensive lineman and not named Bryce Young. He also ran the ball 250 times, which is 11th most in the league and second most among all running backs who played 15 games or fewer. That's a ton. That's McCaffrey level usage. And if the Panthers want to invest in this guy, which they clearly do, they signed him to a 4-year extension the year prior. That usage has to drop. It just does. They need him fresh for the future. They see Chuba as a really integral part of this offense moving forward. And so what happens when your usage drops? Your production drops as well. It was really, and let's be clear, it was really hard to keep Hubbard off the field last year. He had nearly 1,200 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns rushing, was a legitimate player in the receiving game. I still think he'll get a lot of goal line touches this year, so fantasy football guys don't freak out too much. The most reliable play in the red zone the Panthers had was handing the ball to Chuba behind Robert Hunt last year. So I don't think his touchdowns necessarily will plummet, but his overall carries certainly needs to. And then you also add in the fact that Rico Dowdle is coming in as that number 2 running back. He's coming off of 1,000-yard rushing year. You got another draft pick the Panthers invested in this past season with Trevor Etienne, and the coaches seem to really like this guy. It was really hard to get touches for Jonathan Brooks, Miles Sanders, and Chuba last year. And Miles Sanders and Jonathan Brooks were kind of injured at different times, and it was still difficult. Like Raheem Blackshear didn't notch a rush until like really, really late in the season. So it's going to be really hard for Chuba to sustain this continued usage. And so thus, I think even though he might be running better than he has in any other part of his career, his production is just going to dip a little bit. And I think that's just what's going to happen. Mike, what do you think about that theory?
Yeah, I agree. I think actually, I don't know that his carries are going to drop significantly, but I do think his usage on third down and third distance and in the passing game will take kind of a hit. I think Dowdle is the perfect complement to him. I also think ETN makes a lot of sense on third down. I think his carries will drop just because I think they'll do like certain drives where Dowdle just runs with it. But I don't expect it to be significant just because if he plays all 17 games, he'll probably have the production of what he did.
That's right.
In 15 years. So I agree with you. I think you're right. I just don't think it'll be that massive of a drop off. Just because of the context of if he can stay healthy for all 17 games, he's going to get 2 games worth extra carries. I thought that was a good one. My two things can be true is tight end is a concern, but the room has intriguing upside. So Tommy Tremble's dealing with a back injury, just had a procedure. He's probably going to start on the PUP list. And that's going to give Jatavian Sanders and 5th-round pick Mitchell Evans a lot of reps in camp. James Mitchell is another guy, a journeyman, who can kind of fill that Jordan Matthews-esque role. But they're all young. They're all in their early to mid-20s. Look, we brought it up before. They are at the top of the league spending in both offensive and defensive line. So certain positions are going to take some depth hits, and you're going to go cheaper on certain aspects. They signed Tommy Tremble to a 2-year deal worth roughly $10 million with upside for more. But other than that, they've got 2 guys on day 3 contracts and a couple of journeymen, and that's basically what they're doing. And I think sometimes you need to really develop from within, and it has to be guys that you're not investing premium assets in. So if Sanders can be a blessing for them, and last year he was, and he can be a boon, like, you go with that, right? Like, and so, I think ultimately Sanders and Tremble are going to play a lot together in two tight end sets when Tremble's healthy. But I also think Mitchell Evans is like the perfect guy to replace Tommy Tremble while he's out. I don't think he's ready to have like a big role, but I think when you go to 12 personnel, when you go to 22 personnel, he can block, he can catch, he can pretty much do all the fundamental things tight end, similar to Tommy Tremble. He's not going to blow you away. Tommy Tremble doesn't really blow you away. But I think Sanders is that move tight end, is where he belongs. And I think he's going to see, he was having an incredible year before he suffered the neck injury with the Chiefs, and then, kind of stunted. If he can be healthy throughout the year, I think he can take the next step. He looks like he's in significantly better shape than he did as a rookie. I thought he looked fast out there during minicamp. We'll see how that goes. But I do think, while I think tight end's kind of like the cornerback group or the safety group of the offense, I think the upside has so much intrigue there. And I would not sleep on James Mitchell, a tight end who has experience. He's actually played in more games than Sanders and Evans put together. So, like, there's something to that. What do you think?
No, absolutely. The James Mitchell piece is kind of interesting to me because on a 53-man roster, maximum you're going to have 3 tight ends, unless if you absolutely adore a fourth.
Yeah, if you're going to keep 4, like we talked about last week with wide receivers, if you're going to keep 4, that dude better be a baller on special teams. James Mitchell can play pretty well on special teams.
Was Felipe Franks technically the 4th tight end last year? Yeah. And he
was the third when there were injuries, but yeah, he was basically the 4th tight end.
Yeah, no. I think there is a lot of upside in this group. Where you find the 4th guy, or where you find touches for all of them, and where you find development for all of them, will be an interesting puzzle to put together. Like you said, Tommy Tremble's timeline is still up in the air. So yeah, that'll be another. We could have talked about that on our segment about what you're looking forward to in training camp, how tight ends are getting rep distribution. So good stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's a good spot to end it. We appreciate Scott and Thaden joining us, particularly previewing the Superman series, which is available on charlotteobserver.com. Make sure you're checking that out. Make sure you're checking out the full preview of position groups with analysis by both Alex and myself. And then make sure you're signing up for the free Access Panthers newsletter, which you're going to get every Monday in your inbox. And then starting with preseason, you'll get it twice a week. It's something that Alex and I put a lot of effort into, and it's free. And you get a lot of exclusive content in there, so you can kind of feed your Panthers need for free there if you're not a subscriber. But if you're a subscriber, thanks for supporting our work. And there's deals all the time. You're going to want to subscribe during training camp. Nobody covers training camp the way the Charlotte Observer does in this market. I feel very confident saying that. You'll get play-by-play. You'll get news. You'll get analysis. The features, the stock watch, like everything. We've got you covered at the Charlotte Observer during training camp. But I think, Alex, we'll let you wrap this up.
Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike K. and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap on me.